Cape Fear Business Roundtable is sponsored by two branding partners located under one roof right here in southeastern North Carolina. Pioneer Strategies is a strategic communication firm focused on helping you build success through effective strategic communication. Pioneer Specialties is your promotional products partner, ready to help you through the entire process from product research through product delivery. For more information about our sponsors, visit capefearbusiness.com.
Welcome to Cape Fear Business Roundtable. I'm your host, Frank Williams, and today we have with us Josh Winslow from Brunswick Electric. Josh, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for the invitation. Really appreciate it.
And well, before we dig into talking about business, I always like to start out with some personal questions. And obviously, as you know from what you do and where you work, we are in a fast-growing area because you guys have lots of new power hookups every week, I'm sure.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about if whether you're from here and if not, where you are from and how you wound up in southeastern North Carolina.
Sure. I am not from here. I'm from Forsyth County. So just grew up just outside of Winston-Salem, born and raised, and went to NC State. I grew up working for my dad. He's a small business owner, electrical contractor. Worked with him, as a kid. Always knew I was going to be in power. Went to NC State for electrical engineering,
Go
and
Wolfpack.
actually just came to Brunswick County in 2004. And things were growing really fast, and that's why I ended up here. So it's growing fast now. It was growing fast then, and been here ever since.
I went to NC State and thought I wanted to be an engineer, but I did not get along well with calculus and physics, so I wound up deciding on a different major. But I
Yeah.
wonder if we were there at the same time, or if we may have been. I don't know. We can come back to that later. Well, tell us. Obviously, we're going to talk about work, but what is your favorite non-work related either thing to do or a place to go here in southeastern North Carolina?
I like living here a lot. I think I'm at the point now. I talk more about fishing than actually doing
I know
doing
how that is.
fishing. Right. So I got three kids. They're all very busy: tennis, golf, swimming. So mainly, toting them around. And then here in the last few years, really active in our power supply group out of Raleigh and some of our federated organizations. So, we can get into this. We're a cooperative.
Right.
Lot of the business we do is with other cooperatives. So, as a group of co-ops in North Carolina, we own our power supplier. So I'm the chairman of that board. Spend a lot of time in
Okay.
Raleigh and also software company.
Well, that's a kind of a good segue. You talked a little bit about, you went to NC State, majored in electrical engineering, you worked for your dad. Tell us a little bit about your career journey and how that brought you to be the CEO of Brunswick Electric.
Okay, good question. So I ended up here at a time of high growth, and I think what I brought a good legacy, great employees here, great service, always really focused on reliability and storm restoration, and I think we've been a leader nationwide forever. And when they brought me, we were needing to leverage some technology. We were getting bigger, more dense. So I brought just a little more structure to some of those things, including the managing the growth and
Right.
construction. So I worked in kind of the planning group over the new construction for a long time. Then I was over operations for about 6 years. I went back to school and got an MBA in 2015, I think it was, because I just needed some more finance
Right.
education. And at the time, a lot of people were retiring, and I was working closely, on the things that mattered at the time.
And obviously, it's one thing to know the engineering side, but to be in your role, you've got to know the business side. So it certainly makes sense that you went back and got your MBA.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the what you've seen as far as the growth here. I hear people who anytime you guys put out a power conservation alert or one of those peak time warnings that I get, they tell us about how we're doing as far as capacity. We've got obviously a lot of growth coming here. I guess, do we have the power capacity we need? And just talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Great questions. So we're growing at a rate that's really high for co-ops. Some of the co-ops are growing a little faster. Southern Maryland's one of them. We're in that 4%, 3.5, 4%. So you're looking at 8,000 new meters a year. And we saw similar growth in the early 2000s, before 2008. Um, and in this business, long-term planning. Your planning horizon is really long.
Right.
So we do what's called a long-term plan, which is 20 and 30 years out, and then we have smaller segments of that that are 4 years out. So we use growth rates, we use census data, all that, historical growth,
Right.
and basically we're planning very far out. So we rarely get caught in a short-term issue. But I'll give you some color on what happened earlier this year. So we're effectively built um, for let's say close to a gigawatt. So to give you some round numbers, a Walmart would be megawatt. 1,000 of those is a gigawatt. And normally we're running about 20% of that, 200 megawatts. In January and February of this year, we were up at 650 megawatts. So we basically have a highway built to handle 7 lanes of traffic. Normally we're using only 2 lanes,
Right.
and then for about 5% of the year, we get those really cold days and we peak in the winter. And most of that's heat strips. Not a lot of gas in Brunswick, Columbus
Right.
County. Um, it's auxiliary heat, emergency heat
And
creates
it
that.
was
So how are we
unusually
looking?
cold.
Yeah, we're always looking way into the future. But if you drive around, we're building a lot. We've got 3 substations in progress, got a couple transmission lines, and then every day we're putting in underground into houses. Um, you mentioned the peak alerts, and this is something I probably discuss weekly. And we started doing this in the early 2000, about 2020, just signaling to our members that there's a variable with time and cost. So the peakier times, the plants that run are a little more expensive. Fuel costs are a little different. So we've signaled since 2020, hey, pay attention to the time.
Right.
Voluntary beat the peak. It's going to help us all out. Time of use rates. If you can shift, it's going to help us all out. And then our thermostat program, Connect to Save. All those just indicate that, hey, you know, when it's a peak, it's more expensive. They don't have anything to do with capacity. Those
Okay.
aren't resources you rely on for capacity.
And I think that's what, a lot of people, when they get that warning, they think that it has to do with capacity. So I appreciate that clarification. Before we came on, we were talking a little bit about some of the storms we've seen in Brunswick County. Talk a little bit about how you guys prepare for hurricane season, which we're certainly entering, and hopefully we'll have a mild one, but you never know. I know you've been here through a few storms now. Talk about
Few
that
good ones.
experience and how you prepare for those and what you do during and after those storms.
So that's a great question. It's a good topic. So I guess the best thing to say is we focus a lot on resilience. So it's things that you wouldn't see, the
Right.
ability to flex and the contingencies we have built in so that we're not off, right? So a lot of that is how we um, build our distribution system with a lot of loops. We have a lot of contingency, a lot of transmission, a lot of underground. Those things go in place so we never go out. When we do go out, we've got restoration plans. We do tabletop exercises every year. We just completed some of that process the first day of June. So that's kind of a roster of our storm responsibilities and roles. We get together, do simulations, and make sure everybody's up to date. And you've seen that, especially with Florence, Matthew, we bring a lot of outside resources.
Right.
So those relationships are all established within the year. We check in with them, get contracts in place, and we're ready.
And obviously, you guys are a cooperative. Talk a little bit about what a cooperative is and how that's different and why that matters.
Couldn't be more different. And I'm glad you had me on so we can reach a few more people. It's a unique business model. And the way I describe it, it's one of the extremely rare occasions where the company you're doing business with is very much aligned with what you want as a consumer. So we're not for profit. Um, we we're owned by the members, so the
Right.
members are also the shareholders. There's no outside shareholders. So if you think about any of the investor-owned utilities, Duke Energy, they're just that, an investor-owned utility. You kind of you get a misalignment there in the priorities. So we're here to offer great service, kind of quietly, have power always on at the lowest cost possible, which in the country, we have really high scores when it comes to reliability, and we're also competitive on price. So comparability is a big important thing for me. Looking at our neighbors, that's what people do. If businesses want to locate here, they're looking at energy costs, and I'm
Right.
happy to say we're lower than the median in the state, and we work very hard to be competitive.
Well, I know obviously, you're our power company or power cooperative CEO for Brunswick Electric, and you live here in Brunswick County, and your board members, I believe, all live in Brunswick or Columbus
They do.
counties. Is that correct? So that's
Sure. So they represent. We've got 10 directors. They represent a section of both Brunswick County, Columbus County, some of Robinson, some of Bladen, and that they're exactly that. They represent the member owners. They're above me. The members are above them. They're above me, and we execute the strategy that's laid out. We've got about 200 employees. Use a lot of contractors and very strategy focused. So we paint a picture for the way we want the future to look, how reliable we want to be, what our
right.
service looks like, what our rates are, and we get after it.
Yeah. Well, going back to, I guess, kind of where we started, you mentioned that you started out working for your dad. Tell us a little bit about that and how that led to you. You said you knew you'd always be in power. When I was in high school, I don't even know that that would have been on my radar because I didn't really know what that meant. So tell us a little bit about that experience and how it led you to where you are and why you decided you wanted to be in power.
I think it was much earlier than high school, and
Okay.
I have a brother. He's an electrical engineer. Went to NC State. He works at Duke. He's in Wilmington. So I guess we both got it. So my dad
You got
owned a
one at
small
Brunswick
business.
Electric and one at Duke.
Yep,
How
yep.
does that go
Some
at Thanksgiving?
good family Thanksgiving conversations about that. Which we may not have enough time to go through it, but Duke is a very much a partner for us in North Carolina. The way we're structured, so they are very much a partner, especially on the generation transmission side. Um, so I worked when we were kids, you worked with your dad. That was what you did. It's a shame things have changed quite a bit, but I
Yeah.
worked for him in the summers, any day I had off school. And aside from being a good business person, my dad was a really good troubleshooter and understood electricity. And I think that I never looked anywhere else and just wanted to be as big a part in the power industry as I could. So went to state. Um, actually worked in while I was at state in automation controls quite a bit.
Mm.
But I knew I was going to land in the power industry. So all that's helped with what's happened in technology in the last few years. It's growing really fast, especially with AI, and so that background in controls and automation helps.
And you mentioned the partnership with Duke. Talk about that relationship because I don't think most people who aren't in the industry or somehow connected would have any idea of how the two organizations work together.
Sure, we're very much integrated. So in North Carolina, one of the parts of the Southeast that we call vertically integrated, that's where a company owns the generation assets, transmission, also has retail. So Duke owns most of the generation in the state, and through our statewide organization of co-ops, we purchase through that collective group. We purchase power from Duke, so we are contracted for about 60% of our portfolio, and then we own collectively about 40%. And we're all expanding. That ownership will actually switch to more of a 60/40 in the
Okay.
next few years. So Duke is the transmission and wholesale provider for NCEMC. We purchase through NCEMC. Um, I won't say competitively because the territories are drawn in North Carolina, the service territory. So we don't compete on territory, but comparability on rates is very important. So we're constantly looking at Duke's rates and making sure we're comparable there. So a lot of integration with them, a lot of support. I was just with the Duke folks a couple weeks ago at a meeting where we talk about our plans and plans for the future. So, and then locally on the distribution side, I meet quarterly with the folks in Wilmington that kind of run Wyville and Blue and Spring Lakes and those places, and we one of the few places in the state that has a mutual agreement contract in place, so we can help them, they can help us
Right.
in storm restoration. Very happy about, proud of that.
And Going back to storm restoration, you mentioned that. I think a lot of people always wonder who gets their power back on first. Obviously, that's probably not what most people would think it is, but talk about what that looks like as far as how you prioritize, or if there is a formula or how
Yeah,
that
there
works.
is, and I can speak to it very clearly. So if we have an outage, you think about the power system. You've got transmission that feeds the substation. From the substation, you have big distribution feeders. Those feeders branch off and serve individual homes. So if we have a problem on transmission, it'll affect a lot of people. We put
Right.
that back up and get a larger number of people back on. So that's the priority: transmission, substations, the feeders down to individual homes. And then we also, through software, we constantly pay attention to the number of members and the duration. So those get prior at the top of the stack. The longer you've been out, and the more that's what the list
Right.
we're working through. And as long as we can stay organized, I will bring as many resources as possible. So as long as we're handling, I'd rather get it on fast with a lot of
Right.
people, and so we work very hard to be organized, have a good structure, and we do. We've got a great structure in place.
And I think a lot of people may not fully understand just how on the front lines your linemen are when it comes to power restoration in a situation like that. How do you decide when it's safe to send them back out to actually do the work when there's a storm or something going on?
Safety, I don't call it a priority. I call it it's a constraint. It's not something that's a variable.
Right.
It's a hazardous business. So if you look at national businesses where the hazards at, we're in the top. So we're not going to compromise safety. We've got a really good safety department. We actually monitor weather conditions in many locations. So we have our own weather information at substations. When the wind is safe, we'll let people work, and we give them the decision making power in the field. I like a lot of distributed control. Good people
Right.
making solid decisions, well trained. They know what to do. They make decisions in the field on whether it's safe or not, and they'll get things back on.
I
Very
think
driven. It's a culture that's very driven when it comes to restoring power.
the last thing you'd want to do is send one of your people into harm's way and them get hurt or worse because they went out too soon. I mean,
Sure,
yes, we want our power back on, but we want it back on safely. And I think
sure.
that's absolutely critical.
We do pre-position a lot, and that's somewhat unique. I like to have people here and ready to go, so that as soon as it's safe, we're rolling. There is some philosophy to ride around and do a lot of damage assessment, organized that way. I think we've got a more real time model that served our members well.
Well, I think that's
Since I've
especially
been here.
important in an area where places get cut off by, you get a little bit of rain, some things flood, and people probably need to be pre-positioned, or they may not be able to get to where they need to be as well.
You're hitting the conversation points. Lockwood Folly River, that area 17, we've been cut
Yeah.
off. We pre-positioned there with material and assets. Southern part of the county the same way. The islands, wind speeds on the bridges. So yeah, we do exactly what you said. Pre-position strategically for the response.
Now,
Yep.
one
Good
thing
question.
we obviously are in an age where a lot of people like to get their information on places like Facebook and Nextdoor. If people want to get accurate information from you, how can they sign up to hear directly from Brunswick Electric during an emergency situation?
So we're pushing real-time information out to our Facebook page and website, and we do estimated times of restoration ETRs
Right.
on our outage map on the website. So you can check that, and then we'll frequently update in the media with press releases. So, that's something that there's a team of us that take that on. And one thing about a cooperative is we're accessible. You can talk to us. We'll give you all the information we have and keep you updated. That's one thing we take pride in.
Was there anything else you think we need to know about Brunswick Electric that we haven't talked about?
Um, I think probably something that's on top of mind for everyone is affordability.
Right.
Inflation rate, groceries are more expensive, and it's not a secret. The wholesale cost of energy is going up, and I think we left a period of about 20 years where Load was growing, but at a really flat rate. There was almost a long position on generation, and now demand is caught up. And I think that position's a little more short. So in North Carolina, one of the fastest growing states, even though it's a national conversation, the drivers are different in each region. So in North Carolina, we do have a lot of demand. So generation is being built. So new plants being built increases that wholesale cost. And that's one of the reasons as a statewide organization, and Brunswick Electric's the biggest cooperative in that organization.
Okay.
That's one reason over the last few years we've strategically laid out a path to invest in more of our own infrastructure so we can control things like gas prices um, uh, in what we think is a very responsible way and manage that cost increase.
Yeah.
So all hands on deck, a lot of great, capable people planning our future for the most efficient portfolio we can have. And one thing I'll add is Brunswick Electric, the demographic and the type of load is unique for the state. We're effectively all residential, so some small commercial to support um, res, re, members. Not a lot of commercial or industrial load. That's mostly served by Duke. So if you think about
Yeah.
Leland, any of that industrial load is served by Duke. So we're very residential, which means we're very peaky. So like I said, the 7-lane highway is not getting used most of the year. We're probably on a mild day like today. Right now, we're at 200 megawatts. Well, in the middle of summer, that could be 500 or 600 megawatts.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, obviously we saw the peaks during the January or so when it was extremely unusually cold here. How does that compare to your peaks during the summer when everybody is here on vacation?
Very much so. We're a winter peaker, so we're 30% higher in the winter than the most loaded days in the summer,
Interesting.
and that's a function of those really short durations where the temperature is low enough that emergency heat's coming on,
Right.
and we lose some of that diversity. So on a day like today, heating and cooling systems are going on and off. You have a lot of diversity. Start to lose that when you get down into the teens and below 10, and things start stacking up, and the load curve is
Right.
very steep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Well, I think we've covered a lot, and hopefully the people that are watching or listening will know a lot more about Brunswick Electric than they did when they started. But
We
to
may have
change
opened
gears,
more questions than answers. So
oh,
maybe we'll do a follow up
well,
sometime.
they can go to Brunswick Electric's website and I'm sure find the
Sure.
information they need or reach out to someone. Well, changing gears a little bit and going back to a couple of closeout personal questions. What's something you've learned during your career that you wish you'd known on day one when you started?
Another good question. If I got to drill it down to one thing that I think is important in performance in how a company operates is I am much more intentional about teams than I was before. And I don't mean just working together. I mean being very intentional about the structure of teams.
Right.
What are they doing? What's the timeline? What does the future look like? What does the goal look like with absolute clarity? Who do we need on the team to get it done? How do they measure how they're getting it done? And then how can they rally around the outcome when it worked out like they had planned and celebrate the win? So very focused on teams. Like I said, I think people are motivated when you give them all the information they need. Why things are important,
Right.
what needs to be done. They'll take it on. They'll use their discretionary time. They'll think about it when they're not in the office, and they'll get things done. So much more deliberate about teams. I'd say that's probably the secret to success in an organization.
I think that's very insightful. A lot of times see people who know the technical side of their business, but when you get into leadership, it's about the people side. And I think you just touched on that as far as the importance of building the right team and how you manage that team and lead that team. And a similar question, if somebody came to you and said, I'm starting out in the power business, I'm getting out of college today, what advice would you give that person starting out that was looking forward to their career?
Well, the first thing I'd say is, wow, that was a great decision that you went to college to get in this business because high growth, big demand for the people, especially linemen right now.
Right.
Market for linemen is very hot. Any of the trades around the power business. That's the advice I would give them to look for a job in the power sector right now. We're seeing a lot of activity in nuclear. So Duke's unveiled some plans for some new nukes in North Carolina. Again, that's a long planning horizon. Takes many years before you get one in place. So good day for them. Transmissions being built all over the state. So anything in engineering, planning, line work, good idea.
And we could probably do a whole separate podcast on the importance of the trades, and so many people underestimate that. When I was in school, it was kind of almost beaten into our heads that you have to get a white collar job or you're not successful. And I think that's bad advice, because I know so many people who work in trades that make as good a living, if not better, than people who got a degree that theoretically should lead to a desk job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could not agree more with that. And we've been very active with all of our community colleges. I don't need to mention them because it's all of them.
Right.
Helping them stand up lineman programs to provide a good pipeline. All those programs are successful.
Yeah, and I'll say this, a lot of people may watch linemen play on Saturday and Sunday, but when there's a hurricane, the lineman you really want is the one that's working for the power company. That's your
That's
MVP.
exactly right.
Um,
Yep.
well, last question, either what are you currently reading or what kind of podcast do you like to listen to, obviously, other than the one you're currently appearing on?
Yeah, definitely watch this one every episode. Um, So I drive a lot of audiobooks, and I'm solely nonfiction. So I think the last thing I wrapped up was a Eric Larson book that I hadn't read about Winston Churchill, "The Splendid and the Vile," I think's the name of it. Um, and then most of the podcasts are energy related. And then here in the last year, pretty much taking anything about AI that I can get my hands on.
Right.
Just kind of the responsibility of organizations to adopt that in a measured way. And I think there's some real opportunity in AI.
Yeah, I'm always intrigued by the answers to that question. I had an economist on and I asked him what podcast he listened to, and it was NBA basketball. Nothing to do with economics. It was his
Yeah,
way to get away from economics. So it's
yeah.
always
Civil
interesting
War
to hear.
history. Yeah, American history.
Yeah.
Something I'm
Yeah.
into.
Well, Josh, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being with us, and we'll have you back on in a year or so and follow up on this. And we hope you have a great afternoon. And to those of you watching or listening, please go to capefearbusiness.com and follow us so you can get updated on upcoming episodes. Josh, thank you again.
Thanks, Frank. Good to see you. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.